start the session. So welcome to the 8th meeting of the technical working group. And then I would like to thank you all for your time for joining us today. And then also I really appreciate your active participation and substantive inputs to the 5-year strategic plan of the TWG workshop last week. So before starting the main part of today's meeting, let me provide a very brief overview of our last meeting. And in our last meeting, we agreed to organize a workshop to review and then discuss the draft plan. And by giving the members the opportunity to provide inputs and finalize the draft. And of course, the results of which will be presented in our meetings today. And also, due to some technical issues, Ms. Vivian was unable to present her presentation. So we decided to have her today, and then she will present again about developing the disaster risk reduction expenditure in the system of national accounts in this afternoon. So with that, I would like to start our today's meeting. So as I mentioned just now, last week we had a workshop on our 5-year draft planning. So last week at the end of the workshop, I assigned Ms. Shazna from the National Bureau of Statistics of Maldives to present the report on the results of the planning workshop. So she will present us the report, followed by Ms. Maria from the Secretariat. So this time, Ms. Maria will present on highlights of the first meeting of the interagency and an expert group on disaster-related statistics, which was held last May. And also she will give us a briefing on the first expert forum for producers and users of disaster-related statistics, which are planning to be on June next month. So Ms. Shazna and Ms. Maria, you both have 10 minutes. So after the presentation, of course, I will open the floor for discussion, questions, and comments. Now, I would like to ask Ms. Shazna to start her presentation. Ms. Shazna, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I have been assigned to report on the results of the workshop we had on the 21st. Actually, the main objective of the workshop was to finalize the 5-year plan in order to finalize to identify areas where the country's needs and where it can extend support for the 5-year plan actually. So accordingly, we all the participants, in order to obtain the inputs, we were divided into 3 groups, and where we all the groups were given 3 questions. And looking at the 3 groups, it was divided accordingly to the key main areas, where strength group A was on strengthening technical capacity, and group 2 was on contributing to the international standards, and group C was on supporting members governance of the disaster component. And the 3 questions we were asked was on the first one, it was what do countries need from the from and willing to contribute for the 5-year plan. And secondly, we were asked what needs to be added or revised or deleted from the 5-year plan proposed now. And thirdly, what other notes participants would like to pass on to the working group. Actually, these were the 3 main key questions. And as you can see, the 5-year plan in the slides, it's actually the marked in red are the changes we have made is based on the inputs we received during the workshop from the participants. So highlighted in red, I would rather mark during the session, this session. So based on the status on the key area technical strengthening component on the year 2021, it's mostly the identification stage. We have added that brochures or videos on what disaster related statistics the framework is and how it supports the country DRR international reporting is added as from the groups. And for the 2022 on the demonstration component for this area, actually we have added advanced e-learning courses with thematic topics to be included, and the technical working group to help promote the standardized quantification of disaster damage and losses on routine basis in sectors responsible for the reporting disaster impacts is added. And for the 2023 on the replication component for this area, technical strengthening component, it was added that simplified, localized language e-learning country level courses to be included. Is mostly it will be much user friendly. And we have also added that capacities for conducting special surveys and strengthen quality administrative data collection to be added, and as well as on the technical capacity champions and good practices documented to be, we have included to include working in low tech and low connectivity contexts, as well as different countries will be in different levels as such. And on the endorsement stage for this area, we have added to showcase of national and local level good practices, yeah, and country level technical capacity strengthening and good practices to be compiled, and also technical working group to facilitate peer-to-peer learning exchanges between countries. That would very much help all the countries, we believe so. And on the next area, regional participation in the development of internationally agreed standards. On the first year component, we have added technical working group conveys to the global forums current countries needs for more realistic standards. And on the next stage, we have included technical working group to facilitate discussions on hazard classifications, disaster threshold, metadata, practical calculation formulas, and the translation of monetary terms here. And on the fourth stage, we have again added that assists country in applying the standards, including local governments' roles for compiling and reporting. It's very important, we guess, we believe so. And in the area 3 for disaster statistics governance component, we have added on the identification stage, we have added contextualize UNECE's guidelines to the region to address the disconnected disaster data to the national statistical system through clarification and the role of NDMOs and NSOs. Likewise, we've been discussing that in different countries the governance structure is different. So NSOs and the disaster authorities, the connect between both the coordination and the connect is kind of weak in different countries. That's why it's included. And the model of interministerial coordination to be added, a model. And on the second stage, we have added compilation of practical examples and potential research about the collaboration and coordination and addressing barriers we have included. And also the training needs assessment on joint capacity building of NSOs and NDMOs. Likewise, for many of other related areas as well. Currently also we are ongoing as such through different training sources as well. So here also we have added likewise. And on the third stage for the good practices of governance framework of in 3 countries to include issues such as data collection, data security, and data dissemination. We have added that part, and modules and models for decentralized engagement at subnational and community level is included. And lastly, we have in this stage added discussion on capitalizing and broadening the inter-agency momentum emerging from Sendai and SDG monitoring and reporting component. We have added, and on the 4th stage, here we have added ESCAP Statistical Committee to endorses the DRSF model, and as well as lastly, we have added that periodical update from member states on the state of disaster statistics governance to be included. And I believe these were the ones we have added, and we have revised how we have revised the 5-year plan from the workshop. And I would like to request Fuji and Maria to add on if. Thank you.
More inputs from the Secretariat?
Well, yeah, Maria, do you like to screen just one page here PowerPoint that summarize the whole thing? Thank you, Sasna, for presenting the very dynamic workshop that we had last week with a lot of confusion where people going to the subgroup. But nevertheless, the result was very, very substantive. As you see, colleagues, almost half of the plan was supplanted by the discussion from the workshop. I think, I feel that at this moment now, the plan is complete, has been seen by everyone in the working group. And if the chair is pleased and yourself agree, then this plan could become our roadmap for the next 5 years. Maria, do we have that screening?
Sorry.
Could you share with us the one-page slide?
Ying, please share.
Ying, yes.
It's Kun Ying.
Kun Ying. All right, so colleagues, while Sasna presented the additional from the last workshop, if you see the 5-year plan in one sheet, it looks like this, right? So there are 5 years of planning, and each of the years are characterized as identification, 2nd year's demonstration, 3rd year's replication, 4th year's the adoption, and the last year's expansion. And there are 3 layers of our planning: technical strengthening of members, regional participation in the development of the internationally agreed standards, and the strengthening of disaster statistic governance in the member countries. So as you see, it's moving from the left. The situation now with regard to the first topic, there is no or limited technical capacities exchange through the technical working group. And then we have the 5 steps in every year, more or less, and then you can study it later and you can see in the table, reaching to an ideal situation where the technical working group will be able to supply the technical capacity gaps of member states. Okay. The second layers with regard to internationally agreed standard, just keep it there, Ing. Right now, the reading is that we are in the very early development of the standards. In fact, the international group just met last night, I think, for the last 2 nights. And ideally, after 5 years, the standard will be adopted, and it will reflect Asia-Pacific regional priorities that you express through the technical working group. On the 3rd layer, the situation in the countries generally, you said that there is a lack of coordination among stakeholders. Okay, and ideally 5 years from now, roles are clarified, and that NSOs and NDMOs and other ministries are working together to take care of the disaster statistics. And you can go for the details in each of these layers. You can see that on the table. So that's what it is, Maria, from my side, that the 5-year planning, I think, is completed. Now the members has put their inputs and comments and rework the plan, and now probably is comfortable enough to pass it on to the chair and to get adopted by a technical working group. Maria, is there anything you would like to add?
Oh, no, Puji.
Okay. Then
I
back
think
to you,
it's fine.
Chair. Yes. If this is for adoption or you know, onward. Thanks to you.
Yeah, this is for adoption already because everybody has already provided in their inputs.
Thank you, Puji. So now I'd like to invite Maria. Again, she will talk about the highlights of interagency and expert groups first meeting and then briefing on the coming expert forum. Thank you, Maria. Floor is yours.
Okay,
Wait,
thank you very
Chair,
much.
before that one, before we move on, would you like to make decision with the group if the plan is endorsed by a technical working group, please?
Okay. I think can we give one more week or some time to the members that they can go to Confluence platform and then have a look on this draft plan? Then we can ask for this.
I don't know. My feeling was that we had 1 month for that plan
Okay. Yeah.
at the conference, and then we have the workshop already. I feel that this is pretty advanced and pretty complete. And as it was planned in the last meeting, that this meeting today is to endorse the plan.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. If there is no any comments or recommendations for the improvements or finalization of the plan, we can endorse the plan. Yeah.
Okay, I think we need some kind of a second motion from any of the participants.
Yeah.
Anybody from the members who would like to endorse the proposal of the chair?
Oh, okay. Okay, it is. We have given our inputs in the last meeting, so maybe it should be finalized today.
Okay, thank you, Sushil.
Yeah, thank you, Sushil.
All right.
All right.
Anybody else, or just one is enough?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay, then, Madam Chair, your proposition has been seconded by Nepal, by Sushil from Nepal. So I guess you can decide that it's adopted. Thank you.
Yes, of course. As a chair of the technical working group, I endorse the 5-year plan of the technical working group. And then thank you, members and the secretariat, for your great work and then efforts. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on.
Okay, yeah, so let's move. I would like to invite Maria. Maria, floor is yours. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Oriuna. Ying, can you put up the presentations, please? Okay, so I will be providing the highlights of the first interagency and expert group on disaster-related statistics. And this, we might call it the global counterpart of our regional TWG. Next slide. So just for review, the objective of putting up this IAEG is to advance a common statistical framework that will be used not only in the region but all over the world. And two of the functions here is to consider regionally agreed statistical frameworks and recommendations, particularly on the work that was started by the ESCAP, which is the disaster-related statistical framework, and other works that have been done by other regional commission. And the second function is to organize a regular expert forum on disaster-related statistics. Next slide, please. So just for another review, why do we need a common statistical framework? So we need this based on the two demands. There needs to be a guidance on the production, dissemination, and use of disaster statistics to inform national DRR policies and plans, and also to facilitate reporting to the agreed agenda as they relate to the DOR, namely the Sendai and the SDG. And the scope of this framework should cover the basic range of disaster-related statistics management. So this is about the occurrence, impacts, the direct and indirect impacts, disaster risk, and disaster risk reduction expenditure accounts. So this basic range of disaster-related statistics need to also be there in the common statistical framework. Next slide, please. So part of the development of this framework would involve some topics for further research that was taken up within the context of developing the DRSF, the suggestions from the core group, and also from the members of the global group. And among these topics for research include the guidance on disaster vulnerability, development of indicators from a gender perspective, the integration of data on vulnerable groups in the collection of statistics, and its links with the national accounts, environmental accounts, and including its integration with the ecosystem accounting perspective. And there is one suggestion to consider the conflicts in disaster-related statistics, which is very relevant and is happening now. And the two topics also include geo-mapping of high-risk areas and environmental loss. Next slide, please. So the objectives of the meeting is just like the TWG meeting for the organizational and first meeting. And this is for the group to have a common understanding of the objectives, functions, and the deliverables to be able to achieve this framework. And then to consult the members on the scope of the statistical framework, including the topics for research, and of course to review the activity plan, the timeline, etc., and to provide a briefing on the first expert forum, which is happening in June. Next slide, please. Now, for the highlights of the first day, which happened last May 25, the objectives and functions and deliverables of the IAG was presented. There was a briefing on the expert forum, and the proposal of the core group on the process on how we will go about developing this common statistical framework was presented, and this included the scope, the topics for research, activity plan, the timeline, and the roles and responsibilities of each member. And one of the highlights of this meeting was a presentation by experts on selected topics for research, which figured very prominently in the survey from the members of the group and also from the core group of the global group. And these topics for research include disaster risk-related expenditures and classification by Julie Haas, who's an expert on environmental accounting. Then we have accounting for economic losses from disasters, which is actually the number one topic for research that is deemed priority by almost everyone. And this was presented by Daniel Clark, who was one of the ESCAP staff who developed the DRSF. And a new one surfaced, which is about the conflict under disaster-related statistics within the context of national statistical systems. And this is by Virginia Murray. Next slide, please. So for the second day, the members were given the opportunity and the time to be able to discuss the issues for consideration by the IAG, and this is consulting and having a feel of what their thoughts and opinions about the scope and research topics that will be involved for inclusion in the development of the Common Statistical Framework. And they would have a chance to comment on the proposed activity plan, the timeline, and their roles and responsibilities. And what are the role of the expert forum in the development of disaster-related statistics. Next slide, please. So based on the discussions on the second day, we had the different breakout rooms because the membership was about more than 100, so we had 5 breakout rooms consisting of about more than 20 members in each discussion room. So what the results was on the research topics, almost all of the members were in agreement to the different research topics that was presented. And aside from that, new topics emerged from them, and that was not mentioned in the list. And this includes the links of disaster to climate change, ecological loss from disasters, impact of disasters to mental health, and placing the geospatial components centrally in the Common Statistical Framework. So on the proposed activity plan and timeline, because what was in the activity plan was that the Common Statistical Framework would be finished by November 2022. That's a little over the year from today. And almost everyone said that the timelines are a little bit tight and it needs to be reviewed and adjusted as different technical drafting teams. So this will be the members will be divided into teams who would tackle the different research areas. And, producing the issue papers really take time. And on the role of the expert group in the expert forum on the development of the statistical framework, the members said that they can really positively contribute to capacity development, increase the level of cooperation among regions, and there would be a broader engagement within a wider range of clientele. So overall, the reflections on the meeting was the expectations of the members are aligned with the objectives of the IAG because we had a Mentimeter poll with regards to their expectations, and there was a very active engagement of the members. So moving forward, based on the results of the discussions from the members, a process paper will be reviewed. The process paper will be reviewed and adjusted, and this will be again put up for consultation and approval of the larger group of the global group. Next slide. So that's about the end of my presentation. Okay, so not to waste time, I'll just move over to the next one. And this will be about the briefing on the first expert forum. Ian, can you put up the slides? Okay, thank you. So this is the first expert forum for producers and users of disaster-related statistics that the IAEG is conducting. And this expert forum will be held online on June 7, 8, and 10. And for each day, there will be 2 meetings, one in the morning and one in the afternoon, to accommodate the larger audience from all over the regions of the world, and also to consider the different time zones from where the broader audience is coming from. Next slide, please. So the purpose and objective of this, the conduct of the annual expert forum is actually a function of the Interagency Global Group. And this is to support the establishment of a community of practice of producers and users of disaster-related statistics. This will provide a platform for exchange of experiences and knowledge, just like our regional TWG, and inform about what others are doing in terms of disaster-related statistics, and but this time coming from the international expert group. And through this forum also, we can identify maybe important areas of work that could be a possible research agenda. So for the audience, we would be expecting a bigger audience from all over the world, and this will become experts from NSOs, disaster risk agencies, international organizations, the academia, and the NGOs. And as I present this, the members of the TWG are welcome to join this expert forum as well. So as you can see here, the organizing committee is a very large group, but they're mostly consisting of the UNECE and the core group of the Interagency Expert Group. Next slide. Okay, for the sessions of the expert group, there will be 4 sessions. So the session 1 is like the plenary, and this will be tackled under the role of official statistics in disaster risk reduction. So in here, the normative work of the different regions of the world will be presented. And then afterwards, there will be a discussion among the users and producers. And by the way, for this session, Puji will be the session chair. And I think our Yuna will also participate in one of the sessions. Okay. So for session 2 and 3, this will be focused discussions. And for the first one, it will be focusing on the thematic area on health, which is very timely given the pandemic. And in this session, we will be hearing from 8 countries that as concrete examples on how they have managed and tackled disasters, that the challenges that they have faced with regards especially to COVID-19. And Bangladesh, specifically Rafiq, will be a presenter here, and one of our colleagues from Bhutan will be representing the Asia Pacific region. Now for session 3, it will focus on the geospatial dimension with relative to disasters, and in here there will be a presentation from 2 case examples. So the session 4 would be like the concluding plenary, and this will be sort of a wrap-up session, and bring to the fore the outcome of the 3 sessions. And then there will also be key messages from the expert groups. And this is also where we can identify possible areas of research and priority topics also. Okay, next one. Okay, I think the previous slide in. Okay, so this slide contains the registration that's still open. So if you are interested, please, you have still until June 21 to join. And there is a meeting website where all the materials about this forum are contained. So just this material will be available to all in the Confluence after this meeting. Okay, I think that's about it for my presentation. I think I went beyond 10 minutes. So
It's okay, Maria. Thank you.
For the
Yeah,
information.
yeah.
And the contact person here is Michael Nagy, who's from UNECE. So that's all, Arjuna. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maria, for a very informative presentation. Hopefully, our members can make time and then participate to this coming forum. And then thank you also, Shazna, for your excellent reporting. And then at the end, we endorsed the plan. So now it's time to open the floor for the discussion and questions. If you have any comment or questions, please raise your hand or just leave a message in the chat box. Thank you. Is there any questions or comments?
By the way, Arjuna, I would like to add that if you register in the expert forum, there is no, you can just choose the sessions that you want to participate in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's not required that you attend to all the sessions, only those that you're interested in. But of course, I encourage everyone to join the plenary, the first session, where you and Puji will be participating, and sessions of our colleagues from Bhutan and Bangladesh.
Yeah, so there will be some of us. Yeah, and then again, I highly encourage our members to participate in the sessions. As Maria said, that there will be 2 sessions in the morning and the afternoon. Yeah. So any questions from our members? Yes.
May I?
Of course, please.
Okay. Sorry, I could not join on time. I joined late. And what should be the topic of presentation on June 7?
Okay.
Yeah, Maria.
Yeah, I think you can flash the screen again, Ying. Yeah, for the sake of our colleague, yeah. For the sake of Sonam.
Sorry.
Maria, which page or which slide, please?
You can show the one, the session. What is of particular interest to you, Sonam? Session 1?
Sorry, I missed a lot, and I just.
Okay, I think you should just show the sessions, Ying. Yes.
I'm very sorry.
It's all right. I mean, we have time for questions and.
Sorry, Maria, which session?
The slide on the information on the sessions. I think that is the third slide, or the third one.
Is it
where you have the name of the sessions? In the meantime, Arjuna, okay. I think Sonam is still raising his hand.
Yes, I can still see Sonam. Yeah.
Okay, I think we'll just wait for a while.
okay?
Okay, next slide. All right. Sonam, so these are the sessions. Session 1 would be like a plenary. And then session 2 would be the session where Bhutan would be presenting here. And Bhutan will be presenting on the health-related hazards. And she will be in the morning session, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so third session would be on the geospatial dimension of disaster statistics, and number 4 would be like the concluding plenary, like reviewing the 3 sessions and yeah, the wrap up all the sessions.
Excuse me. This was session 3, geospatial dimension.
Okay.
How do you expect the presentation to be? Actually, I'm a little more interested in this part, but I will have to work on the former one also, health related hazard also. That's also okay.
Yes, I think, Sonam, what I suggest is that there is a link. Can you show the next page, Ing? There is a website where you can, well,
Okay.
all the available
Okay.
materials are there.
Okay.
And the documents, many reference materials are already uploaded in that link.
Okay.
Yeah, and on the details of the workshop, the concept note and everything.
Okay, then. That's okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Sonam.
Thank you, Sonam, for the questions. So we have Leah.
Yes, thank you very much.
Please go ahead.
Yes, possible to participate in 2 sessions.
Yes, yes. It's still open. The registration is still open, and everybody's welcome to participate.
Yes, I have big experience collaboration with the users and producers in gender statistics, and I can contribute my experience.
Okay. Okay. This is good, Leah. So I will coordinate with Michael because for some sessions it's still open. Yeah. So I will just coordinate with you later on after the meeting where you can provide, where you can share your country experience, and it would be most welcome, I think. Yeah.
Miss Vivian, please go ahead.
Yes, just a quick question. One is what is the linkage of the existing regional technical working group on disaster statistics that we have now vis-a-vis the expert group meeting and the other groups that everybody is invited to participate? How do we link with them? What are exactly our expectations as technical working group, not as an individual?
Yeah. As presented by Shazna, we have the second priority area of the 5-year work plan, right? So this is where our linkage to the global group and actually to all the regional commissions who are also doing disaster related work. So it's not only our connection with the global group, but with other regions as well, because a lot of work is going on in other international organizations like the ECLA, the ESCWA, and also the UNECE. So with regards to the expert forum, this is a function of the bigger group, the global group. And when in the TOR, it is put there that the global group will conduct a regular expert forum on disaster data statistics. And this would involve a broader audience. And that would be including all the members of the regional groups that are involved in the disaster data statistics. So it's like we are representing the regional group for Asia Pacific in terms of disaster, and then we have the global group, and then events like this, like the expert forum, are platforms wherein everybody can come together. So it's a bigger audience, a bigger group, and not only from NSOs and disaster management agencies, but individual experts from NGOs, from the academe. So it's like we're part of the bigger groups, which are all interrelated. and each group contributing to the development of disaster-related statistics.
Thank you very much, Maria. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vivian, for the question. I can see Mr. Sushil.
Yes, thank you.
And,
thank you, Chair. Just one query for Maria.
Okay.
Either both the sessions are live or one session is recording. We have to join both the session or a little bit confusion.
Oh, the sessions are live. What is said there is some of the presentations are pre-recorded. Like for example, we will have pre-recorded presentations of the various works done by the different regions like the DRSF, because it takes time to save on time. But what will happen in the sessions itself is just the different heads of the regions will just provide a summary. So the members can have a look at the reference documents for their perusal before the expert forum.
Okay.
So it will be live. It will be live.
Yes.
Live, but it's online.
Thank you.
Okay, so is there anyone who wants to ask a question or just say a comment? If not, we've run out of time, so let me move to our next session. So next session is about on the country's pilot studies. So let me introduce Ms. Oyun Jargat Mangalsure. She will serve as a moderator of our next session. So Ms. Oyun Jargat, she is a senior statistician of the Economic Statistics Office of the National Statistical Office of Mongolia. So Ms. Oyun Jargat, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much invite me to moderate this session. This is the first time for me to moderate in international meeting. If I will do any mistake, I'm so sorry. This session will continue 25 minutes, for a presentation 50 minutes, and for questions and answers 10 minutes. There is one presentation in our session. The presentation topic is disaster risk reduction expenditures in the Philippines. Now I would like to invite a presenter on the floor. Her name is Miss Vivian. She is the Assistant National Statistician of Microeconomic Account Service, Philippines Statistics Authority. Welcome, Vivian. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Again, good afternoon, members of the Technical Working Group on Disaster Statistics. I am pleased to present to you the experience of the Philippines in developing the disaster risk reduction expenditure within the framework of the system of national accounts. Okay, so this is my slide. On the next slide, I will tell you how we develop the DRRE. So in the Philippines, we have prioritized this indicator, which is the disaster risk reduction expenditure, because there is a need for information on this indicator. As you may be aware, the Philippines is a disaster-prone country, and on the average in the Philippines, we are visited by like 10 typhoons in a year. So it is very important that the planners, for example, would like to know how much expenditure we are really spending for the disaster in all areas of the disasters. So we started developing this way back in 2017, while we are participating in the UNDRR Intergovernmental Expert Working Group on Terminologies and Indicators. Along with this, while we are participating with the UNDRR indicators and terminologies, we are also participating that time on the development of the Sendai framework, also under the UNDRR. So starting 2017, we have been active as members of the technical working groups. And then the following year, 2018, we are fortunate that the Philippines was selected as one of the 5 countries to pilot the DRSF, the Disaster Risk Statistical Framework of the UNESCAP. So together with the Philippines, we have also Fiji, Bangladesh, and Indonesia. Also in the same year, the Philippines hosted the expert group on statistics, and we learned so much in terms of the experiences of the different countries that participated in the expert group on disaster. This is under the UNESCAP. And also on the same year, we invited the ESCAP if they can provide us the country training for the Philippines, especially for the compilers of the DRRE. At the same time, for all the data producing agencies that will support the framework of the DRSF. So after 1 year, then we attempted to already estimate the DRRE. But before we do that, we established a technical working group on disaster statistics, and this is under the bigger umbrella or the Interagency Committee on Environment Statistics. So the first estimate was done in 2019, and we did a lot of presentations in terms of showcasing the results of the Philippine experience, and also we were invited to present in the ISI in Malaysia, and also in several fora, even at the local level, Convention of Statistics, and also in the Interagency Committee. So after the first estimate that we did for the DRRE, then we tried to do some of the refinements of the methodologies. At the same time, again, review and assess the data that are available, and really to look at some of the data problems, especially on the addressing the data gaps. Not all the data that we would need for the framework are there. So it is very important that this framework, DRSF, are within the umbrella framework or bigger framework of the system of national accounts, because in the system of national accounts, we are able to see the consistencies and the linkages of the different data produced by the different agencies. Okay, so in 2020, that was the time when we also participated in other fora. For example, we were invited by the UNECE in Geneva to do a presentation of the DRRE during their forum of the disaster statistics. And regularly, we meet under the technical working group in the Philippines. So that's how we developed the DRRE. But let us look back. Why DRRE in the Philippines? We tried to do consultations within the Philippines, within the disaster management agencies and the different stakeholders. And it is very important that DRRE has supported the Philippine or the country's national priorities. Even some of our commitment in the international level, we have supported them. So what is really very important, the DRRE, they seems to be popular because one, they can demonstrate how investments in the disaster can not only save the lives of the population, of the people, and it cannot only help reduce the poverty, but it can also be a wise investment in terms of the point of view of the economy. So foremost in the Philippines, we have priorities indicated in the Philippine Development Plan. So disaster concerns are there. We have also the long-term vision of the Philippines for 2040. We have also the 10-point socio-economic agenda and so on. Most importantly, we have the sustainable development goals, moving towards a sustainable agenda for 2030. So these are some of the priorities that were the disaster or DRRE are which are supporting the plans. And we have, of course, the frameworks, existing frameworks. The next slide will show you. This is the one I was mentioning. These are the national priorities and including the international commitments. Okay. So the next slide will just show you. Next slide, please. The next slide will show you. I am highlighting the disaster-related statistics framework. Then this was an undertaking under the ESCAP along with the Asia Pacific countries, and this framework highlighted the need to compile DRRE, including the statistics that supports the DRRE for better analysis of the disaster that would result in a more effective disaster reduction risk management. So if you look at on the next slide, this slide, okay. So in the on the previous slide, Yang, please, previous slide. Okay, this slide will show you just an overview of the DRSF. It focuses information statistics that we need to collect or that will support the disaster risk reduction management planning and so on. These are the statistics that are important before the disaster, during the disaster, and after the disaster. At the same time, it is also highlighting the disaster expenditure accounts on disaster risk reduction. And these are the different data that are required, and this is linked with the system of national accounts. So very specific, what are these data? So examples are the expenditures on disaster by the government, by the private sector, by the household, and those transfers from other countries or from the rest of the world to the country, and so on. So these are examples of the data that would need. The next slide will also show you, which is very important, that maintaining the information for the disaster statistics and compiling the DRRE is impossible without our partners. For example, right now, it is the Philippine Statistics Authority that is compiling the DRRE. We are not experts in terms of the disaster management, disaster preparedness, and so on. So we need experts or partners from the disaster management offices and other agencies. So we have established coordination mechanism. We have the interagency Committee on Environmental Statistics. We have also the Philippine Council on Disaster Risk Reduction Management, and we have also the Philippine Statistical Development Plan. And in this plan, we have listed all the statistical activities and the statistical programs that are relating to environmental statistics and also the disaster statistics. And we have, of course, the PSA, our office in the country, is the lodging house of the Sustainable Development Indicators. And this is also very important to integrate the DRRE not only within the environment indicators, but also with the sustainable development indicators. Okay, so we have data sources like the Commission on Audit to provide us data for the government expenditures. Also, the Department of Budget and Management also from the to provide us data on the government, both at the national government, at the local government, even the government-owned corporations. We have the National Economic and Development Authority. They provide data in terms of the transfers. A lot of this information gathered by the NEDA are coming from those donations, grants, or transfers from other countries that they provide to the Philippines when there are disasters, occurrences, or disaster and hazardous events. Of course, we have the Office of the Civil Defense. They are the management agency, disaster management agency, and we work closely with them. Of course, our office, the Philippine Statistics Authority, we are the compiler of the national accounts, the compiler of the satellite accounts. So there is a need to link the DRRE with the system of national accounts. Now, moving on, the next slide, you will see how do we do the estimates, the compilation of the DRRE. First, we need to look at the scope of the disaster. We need to understand the definition of the disaster and the classifications. How this disaster data are coming into the different offices. So from the framework of the DRSF, it was highlighted that there is a need, it is also important to look at the disaster spending or expenditures by the different classifications. How much are spent by the public? How much are spent by the private? Of course, by public, we mean the government at all levels of the government, then the private expenditures with the household, private corporations, and even the non-profit institutions serving households. Next slide will also show you that it is also important that expenditures will be classified according to thematic areas. How much are we spending on prevention and mitigation? This is to avoid the hazards and mitigate the potential impacts. And also number two, how much we are spending in terms of preparing for the disaster. This is to establish and strengthen the capacities of the population and those working in the government that are responsible for the disaster. And then how much we are spending in responding to the disaster. This is now to provide life prevention and meet basic needs of the affected population. And after the disaster, then we need information on how much we are spending in terms of the rehabilitation and the recovery of the damages done during the disaster. But it is also important that to look at what are these type of investments, what are these type of expenditures in the disaster. Are there are are they the current expenditures, or are they the fixed capital formation or the investments? So we try to look at two dimensions of expenditures, whether they are for supplies and materials, or are they for investments? Like, are you spending more on the equipment? So we look at them by the different types of investments. So, of course, the compilation of the DRRE is very challenging. Very challenging because data are not readily available. So we make do of the available information, and we have now the preliminary results. The next slide will show you some of the preliminary results. Okay. We compiled the DRRE expenditures by the government and by the households and the private. This is for years 2015 to 2019. And the results showed that we have not really spent very much in terms of DRRE. When we look at the gross domestic product and we look at the share of the disaster expenditures, this is only representing 1.0% of the gross domestic product. This is very small. In any countries, yes, possibly in developing countries, we have like 1 to 3% of the total GDP. But we have yet a lot of things to improve on. So this indicator is very important, especially for the agency that is manning the disaster, disaster response, preparedness, and rehabilitations, that there's a need to increase more to really provide a better service to the population in terms of addressing the disaster damages. Now, the next slide will show you from the total expenditures for the Philippines, 78% is spent by the government. Only 22% are the private sector. Yes, I think this is also the responsibility or mandate of the government to protect people from damages, from the impacts of the disaster. But if you look at the private sector, they are also spending more. 22% of the total expenditure is spent by the private sector. Now, on the next slide, you will see that as earlier I mentioned about the different classifications by disaster management, by disaster recovery, and disaster prevention mitigation. And we have found out that the biggest share of the total expenditures on disaster, which is 47%, is used for prevention and mitigation. I think this is very clear, no, that prior to the disaster, we need to spend more. We need to have to provide higher expenditures to make sure that this the infrastructures are there to prevent damage, more damage to the population and to the property. After prevention and mitigation, expenditures are this is followed by the expenditures on disaster recovery, which is 31%, and then followed by the disaster management at 22%. So the highest being the prevention and mitigation. Second is on recovery, and third on the management. The next slide will show you, if we look at how investments are provided for disaster, we can see that the share of the current disaster expenditure, current is only 14.8%. Current meaning these are the supplies. These are the for maintenance and operating expenses. So we spend only 14.8%. But this became higher at 35.5% in 2016. But if we look at the investments on disaster in terms of buying equipment, putting up infrastructure to prevent disaster, and this is higher. So we have 85.2%. So of the total expenditures on disasters, expenditures on investments, putting up equipment, infrastructures, accounted for 85.2%, and the rest are on the maintenance and operating expenses. Okay. So these are the sets of indicators that you can derive, you can get from compiling the DRRE accounts. And it is very important that we might need to see a lot more on this, meaning these are just key results, and there are some variables that can be also extracted from this exercise of doing the DRRE. Now, from the experience of the Philippines, there are yet a lot to do in terms of the compilation of the DRRE accounts and link them with the system of national accounts. On this next slide, on the conclusion, so
Next slide.
this slide I have already mentioned. The next slide will, yes, this one. Thank you. So this is the first attempt of the Philippines to develop the DRRE accounts within the system of national accounts. There are yet a lot of things to do. Number one, we developed this in terms of what are the available data, what are the available concepts that we get. And we are very happy and we are grateful on the DRSF done by the UNESCAP and so also by the UNDRR. And we put them all together as one to look at the concepts, the definitions, classifications, and methodologies, look at the recommendations, and put them forward in the context of the Philippines. These informations in the manuals are conceptual. From the point of view of the compiler of the PSA, we would need something like an operational guidelines, operational methods to convert all this data, which are not really for disaster statistics and not really to compile disaster accounts, but these are data available for general purpose statistics. So it would need an expertise to how do you convert all this data available to the accounts. And of course, data are not really there. There's a regular.
Vivian, I'm sorry. I think you need to wrap up your presentation.
Okay, yes, this is the last slide. This is the last slide. So we need also regular data reporting. We need to train people to compile the RRE, and we need also to engage with other development partners. Thank you very much. That ends my presentation.
Thank you, Vivian. Thanks very much for your nice and very detailed presentation for us. Now we are moving to the questions and answers and comments. If you will have a question, please leave on the chat box and also raise your hand. And also, Vivian, we have already question from Salamet Sutemo on the chat box. Can you see?
Yeah. Excuse me, G. I think let's just entertain one question from Slamet, and then we will move on to the next presentation. In the interest of time. So if anyone has a question for Vivian, just to write them in the chat, and then Vivian will answer them in the chat. So in the meantime, let's have the last question from Slamet.
Okay.
Can I ask by verbal my question?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. My question is that please tell us about how, for example, in Philippines, calculate the investment data done by household, especially poor household, because what I think that the poor household doesn't enough funds to do investment. So do you have something more telling about that one? Thank you.
Yes, this is a question that will go back to the system of national accounts. Yes, the household, the expenditures of the household when there are disasters, they damage their houses, they repair their houses, and the expenditure to put up the new houses and to repair, the expenditures for repairs are part of the expenditures, or what we call the capital formation. So how do we get this? In the Office of the Civil Defense, they have data on the number of houses damaged and number of houses for repairs. And then we have square meters. We have the construction statistics that will tell you if you repair these houses for given the square meters, then your cost will be this one. So we put together all the different data sets and come up with a single data for the investments for households.
Can I telling more? I think this is more important really if we have expert forum, because what I think, how we help poor people to reduce disaster in the future. So if we think about how we manage their own fund, I think it's impossible. So there's something more about that one. I think that's my additional telling. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Because of the time limitation, we should cut our question and answers. If you will have any questions and comments, please just leave it on the chat box, and Vivian, you can answer on the chat box also for the participants. And thanks for your participation in this session. And
thank
now,
you very much.
Session ended. Now I would like to invite Ms. Vasiti Soko on the floor to moderate next session. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Bulabanak, everybody from Fiji. We only have, as per the time here, enough for 2 more presentations before we wrap it up. Our first presenter today is from Georgia, Miss Leah. Sorry, I can't pronounce your surname. She's the head of division for National Statistics Office of Georgia. Miss Leah, the floor is yours. Before I give it to Miss Leah, may I ask those that are interested to ask the question, because of the time that we have, please post the question in the chat box as the presenter does a presentation. And then if we have time, we will definitely ask some of those questions. Ms. Leah, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon. Please, my presentation is okay. Development and efforts on disasters-related statistics in Georgia. First slide, please. I would like to start my presentation introducing legislation which we adopted in Georgia. First of all, in 1997, it was adopted law of Georgia on state of emergency, and this law defines a regime complex special measures that should be taken for the rapid normalization of the situation and restoration of the law and order. A state of emergency is a temporary measures that shall be declared in accordance with the legislation of Georgia in the interests of ensuring the security of the citizens of Georgia during mass disorder, encroachment upon the territorial integrity of the country, military coups, armed insurrections, terrorist acts, natural disasters of man-made catastrophe or outbreaks of epidemic, or in other cases when the state authorities are unable to exercise their constitutional powers in a normal manner. Second one, law of Georgia on public safety. This law defines the country's defense and security complex, which includes prevention of emergency situations and mitigation of their results, and therefore disaster risk reduction implementation aspects. The law defined primary measures of emergency response, as well as competencies of the Ministry of Internal Affairs and other institutions in the field of emergency prevention, assessment of its risk and mitigation of consequences. The law presents an integral emergency management system. Next document is National Disaster Risk Reduction Strategy. This strategy, point 3.4, development implementation of methodology approach for post-disaster damages and recovery, needs assessment, and the calculation of economic losses. This was the first national strategy in this sphere, which was adopted by the government of Georgia. The goal of the strategy is to establish the unified disaster risk reduction system to improve disaster preparedness and response capabilities at national and local levels, and to increase response efficiency to the possible threats. The goal of strategy was to create unified, flexible, and efficient system which ensures reduction of natural and man-made disaster risks by joint efforts and coordinated activities of the agencies defined in the Georgian legislation. The system was based on the whole of government approach and fully comply with international standards. At the same time, the unified system was oriented on creation of the safe living and work environment and sustainable development of the country and its economy. Quick and correct calculation of losses and the assessment of recovery needs with the use of a unified methodology is important for taking timely actions and efficient elimination of disaster results, as well as for evaluation and modeling of natural disaster threats. These activities include measures to be taken before, during, and after a disaster, a methodology for identification, collection, and analysis of data was developed. Competencies of different stakeholders are delineated, and the institutions responsible for coordination is identified. Economic and social mechanism for disaster management is developed, and the unified policy of the government for payment and compensations and implementation of recovery activities was elaborated based on a well-tested international methodology, international obligations, and prioritizations of needs. Development of this mechanism improve management in the following areas: registration, compensations, fair and efficient state assistance mechanism, possibility of cooperation with local community, private sector, and international community, development of an insurance market, justification, prioritization, and risk modeling. And the last one, this based on the strategy, was developed action plan with which defines concrete activities, responsible and supporting institution agencies, as well as implementation timeframes and the sources of financing. The period of this action plan was 4 years, 2017-2020. The National Action Plan defines responsible and supporting institutions for each activity, as well as deadlines and the sources of finance for implementation. The National Strategy and Action Plan were implemented in compliance with the country international obligations and the Georgian legislation based on the principles of the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction and taking into account national regulators. Next slide, please. About coordination, emergency response management bodies are at the national level the Prime Minister of Georgia, to whom the State Security and the Crisis Management Council shall submit corresponding recommendations and proposals to make a political decision regarding emergency management. And the Interagency Emergency Management Operations Center, a body formed by the designated authority from the authorized persons and the executive government agencies of the unified system. The center organizes and coordinates responses to expected and actual emergencies at an operation level. Emergency headquarters of executive government agencies, the bodies managing the units of the unified system and empowered of organized activities of the respective units of the unified system in the field of public safety according to the management levels and the sectoral affiliation. And for the local level, local emergency management operations center, according to the existing legislation, local self-government bodies are responsible for develop departmental action plans within their field of competency in order to ensure the achievements of the goals and the objectives underlined with here the strategy. And next one, please. The state bodies for data collection, the National Statistics Office of Georgia, it is legal institution that produces and disseminates the statistical information, does not maintain specific disaster-related data. Special data and important pillar of the disaster database and platform that combines the historical and projected disaster data is available with some gaps that need addressing. In other sources, disaster statistics are the National Environment Agency, which are accesses and documents geoecological conditions, performs forecast and warning risk zoning and mapping. Hydrometeorology department and geology department maintains topographic maps. Academic communities, this is under Tbilisi State University seismic zoning map, and also this Institute of Earth Sciences and Seismology. Next one, please. Next slide. This is website of National Statistics Office of Georgia, and as you see, we disseminate only data on registered fires. It is quarterly data, and the source of this data is Ministry of Internal Affairs of Georgia. Next slide, please. From 2010, data of registered fires includes number of fires and arsons or so, and because it is so big the difference between data from 2010 and 2001. Next slide, please. With collaboration, European Union standards, EU-Georgian Association Agreement, the commitment to improving the utilization of disaster-related data, including in the assessment of management of flood risks. It is adoption of national legislation, the designation of competent authorities, and the data collection for preliminary flood assessment and preparation of flood risk maps, and also the development and the updating of flood risk management plans. The Caucasus Environment Network, supported by Netherlands, has a project that includes special approaches and technologies of new system for data management and atlas for natural hazards. Next one. And challenges for nowadays for Georgia is lack of administrative sources. Data are not collected, systematized, customized, and regularly updated is in one central repository. A lack of experience of producing disaster-related statistics in administrative sources as well as at Geostat, and the lack of knowledge of disaster-related statistics. Next one. Thank you for, yes, thank you very much for your attention. And we are ready to continue our collaboration and to develop this area statistics with international experts and international organizations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Leah. The presentations were quite comprehensive. A few of the things that you've highlighted in your presentations are common challenges across here as well in the island nation. I've seen a few questions in the chat box. We may just give it one question for you to ask, and we'll move on to a second presentation. There's a few other questions in there, Ms. Leah, if you would like to address those questions. But for now, the question is, does Georgia use insurance framework to solve disaster? How it works, and if it has worked, how did it work? Yeah, what were the method used to ensure that it was successful?
Yes, we use insurance for disaster, but it is not more developed. It is very little developed in our country, unfortunately. And the second question, I think, it's for household expenditure on investments. Their expenditure is resulting from this same situation. We have very not developed, and we have gap in this direction of statistics.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Leah, for the presentation again, and thank you, colleagues, for the questions that have been raised in the chat box. If there's any further questions, please, I ask that you keep dropping your questions in the chat box, to which Ms. Leah can address that directly. We'll now move to our second presentation, which is from Nepal. Our last presentation this evening is from Sushil Kumar Sharma. He is the Director Environment for Statistics Division, Central Bureau of Statistics in Kathmandu. Mr. Sharma, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Suko. I'll share my screen. Oh, is it?
Secretary, could you please assist Mr. Sharma?
I think it is not.
Okay, there you are, Sushil.
Yeah, it is sharing.
Yeah.
Okay, can I go?
Yes.
Thank you. Respected chair and colleagues, first of all, it is my great pleasure to say thank you for UNESCAP giving this opportunity to share the status of the disaster statistics in Nepal. We are on very basic level in disaster statistics. Though Nepal is one of the disaster-prone country, hope to develop the disaster statistics in Nepal. Thank you, Dr. Puji, for providing feedback on my draft presentation. Now I start my presentation. Next slide. Okay. Nepal is one of the disaster-prone. First slide. Yes, Nepal is. Okay, second. Just confusion. Yeah, Nepal is one of the disaster-prone country due to its topography and the climatic condition. Earthquakes, landslides, floods, fire, thunderbolts are the major causes of disaster events. Environmental degradation and the climate change both interact with and exacerbate the occurrence and the impact of the natural hazard events. Yearly loss of life and property and the significant proportion of gross domestic product is GDP is lost by these different kinds of disaster. Government of Nepal is developing the understanding among all tiers of government and the stakeholders. The government of Nepal works in collaboration and partnership with the stakeholders for the effective disaster risk reduction and the management in Nepal. these partners, either in the government sector, private sector, and the NGO, INGO. Similarly, Nepal is committed to implement the Sendai framework for the disaster reduction. The major responsibility of the disaster management is the Ministry of the Home Affairs. So the Home Affairs designated the disaster focal person in each stakeholders. Please, next slide. The major existing legal and the policy framework. The Constitution of Nepal. Has shared the responsibility of the disaster risk reduction management, and in its directive principle, it has addressed in the directive principle of the government. Similarly, we have the Disaster Risk Reductions Management Act, which is in 2017. The major role of this act is to formation of the National Council for Disaster Risk Reduction and Management, with the chairmanship of the Prime Minister. Similarly, we have the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Authority. Major role of this two organization is to establish the coordination and to implement the DRR function. So from the Gorkha earthquake, which was the most disaster in 2015, more than 8,000 people killed in that disaster, and many property and infrastructure lost in that Gorkha earthquake. By the experience of that Gorkha earthquake and other disaster, National Disaster Risk Reduction Policy, and similarly the action plan from 2018 to 30, and the comprehensive planning framework has been designed. Similarly, I am from the National Statistical Office. We have developed the National Strategy for the Development of NSDS. NSDS is the 5-year plan of the NSO, and there is one thematic area in the environment. So some program related to disaster included in this NSDS. Please, next slide. Also, for the disaster data coordination, major in the government sector, there are two organizations for the admin data and for the disaster information management system. Basically, the Ministry of the Home Affairs is responsible. Ministry of Home Affairs, there is a National Emergency Operations Center, UNECE. It manages and publishes the biennial Nepal disaster report. In every 2 years, it produces the report, and the last report is in 2019. Similarly, there is one portal, DRR portal, Nepal Disaster Risk Reduction Portal, conducted by this National Emergency Operations Center. And we have one open source web-based platform for the disaster, but nowadays the SANA system is not working properly. Similarly, different disaster information management system from the government and the other sector, like the Department of Hydrology and Meteorology. So we have the early warning system. These give the evidence-based decision support program, and this is the repository of the data, information policies, and key decision for all level of for the disaster risk reduction management. And this provides the real-time data, like for the hazards, events, affected population, and the casualty. And the local level disaggregated data and the capacities and the humanitarian preparedness, these also included in this DIMS. Basically, CBS, it means the National Statistical Office, NSO is responsible for the survey and the census, and similarly compilation and the publication of the disaster related data. Next slide, please. And this is the portal. This is the DRR portal conducted by the MOHA, Ministry of the Home Affairs. and this day to day it is updated in weekly. And for the local level data in Nepal, we have central government, provincial level government, and the local level. Up to local level, we can get the data, and the user can use this data by exporting in, and they can use in other form by exporting to the Excel and other sheet also. This is the DRR portal conducted by this Ministry of Home Affairs. Next slide, please. Yeah. For the disaster and the basic statistics, recently we have on the population census 2021. Now it is adjourned due to this pandemic. There is, in the first time in the history of the population census, we have introduced the community questionnaire in the population census. The ward is the lowest administrative division in Nepal. We have 7,643 wards. And in this census, we have developed the community questionnaire, and each community questionnaire is filled in each ward. And in that questionnaire, there is one thematic area, that the disaster and the hazard events. The two questions we included in the population and the questionnaire, that to include the disaster and the hazard, type of the hazard they feel in their area, like conditions of the hazard, like flood, landslide, soil erosion, inundation, thunderstorm, hailstorm, sporadic rain, heat wave, cold wave, drought, avalanche. Nepal is a small country, but different climatic condition, and these types of the disaster or the hazard events can happen here. So what kind of the disaster or what kind of hazards you are feeling in your community? These kinds of question we are asking in the community questionnaire. And the loss of the life and the property in 1 year. These two questions we are including in the community questionnaire. This will be the baseline data for the disaster mapping and other special type of disaster related survey for Nepal. Similarly, we have the environment statistics section in CBS, where I am working. We regularly publish environment statistics of Nepal in the interval of 2-3 years. And we are producing this environment statistics with the guidelines of the United Nations Framework for the Development of Environment Statistics. And there is one module that is disaster statistics, and we produce the disaster statistics by collecting from the other secondary source and the survey and the census conducted by the Central Bureau of Statistics, NSO. Similarly, in different year, we produce the environment compendium, which is more analytical report. This environment statistics basically focuses on the data, and this analytical report, that's compendium, focuses more on the analytical type of report. If we have the disaster related data, the expert from the university or from the other area, they give their views in the analytical report. Next slide, please. Yeah, in 2016, we conducted first time in Nepal the National Climate Change Impact Survey, which is one of the pioneer survey in this region, and we got some technical support from the ESCAP for this survey also. And basically, the survey focuses on the knowledge of the respondent on the climate change, and what are the effect, impact, and adaptation practices of the respondent they covered. And basically we got because climate change is one of the causes for the disaster. So this survey gave the result like the drought, fire, inundation, these kinds of disaster they feel due to the climate change. They are their perception. They are their perception in that survey. Next slide, please. And the challenges, the major challenges we have, because Nepal, already I told that Nepal is one of the disaster prone country, and uncertainty of the risks due to this climate change. And we have a very less investment in the preparedness and the early action for the disaster. And similarly, we have the very knowledge gap in understanding the diverse risks due to limited scientific assessments. No more resource surveys are conducted in the disaster sector. Similarly, in the information also, technology, knowledge on the practical aspect of the disaster risk reduction management, we have the knowledge gap. Similarly, proper allocation of budgeting, planning and the execute activity related to disaster risks. Other are the priority area. In linkage among the institution agency involved in forecasting, managing and assessing the risks and the responses. Similarly, some coordination gap also. Similarly, some hazards like the tackle the transboundary nature of hazard. So bilateral and the international efforts are required to tackle that. That is also one of the challenge. Next slide, please. Yeah, expectation and the way forward. Definitely, it is required the better understanding of the risks through the resource survey and assessments. For this technical working group, and especially I request for the special type of survey, just like Vivian presented earlier, that one of the expenditure survey they have conducted. This kind of special survey are also we are eager to do. So for this, we required for the capacity development and other things. So it's to improve institutional arrangement and the structure. And similarly, bilateral and the international cooperation and knowledge country experiences program also our expectation. And similarly, already I told we have the different tiers of the government, and definitely we should empower our leadership in the province and the local government, because they are the producer of this data. They provide us the data. Similarly, effective and the integrated implementation of the disaster information management system, sharing of the disaggregated data, and similarly, it is needed to strengthen the GIS of the Central Bureau of Statistics, UNESCE, because we are planning in our this community questionnaire. We have one that already I told that we have one thematic area, that is disaster and the hazards events. If we find out the location of that, what kind of disaster, what area. So if we strengthen the GIS, definitely we can develop the disaster mapping. And focusing on that disaster mapping, we can conduct a special type of the research or the surveys. Similarly, that needs to strengthen our GIS system and the environment sections of the UNESCE Central Bureau of Statistics. Similarly, definitely it is also required country level training workshop. Now, due to this pandemic situation, we are on the online. These things are also very helpful to develop the capacity and to go further. Next slide, please. Okay, this much for my presentation. If any queries, any comments, if I can get answer, definitely I'll do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sharma. Another good presentation. The challenges seems to be also covered by our presenter earlier. Something that definitely their committee can look into and work better to improve. Because we are pressed with time, I ask that you please address the questions in the chat box directly to those that are asking the question. And I hand over the forum back to Ms. our chair lady, please. Thank you.
So thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Oyun Jorgal and Ms. Vasiti, for your excellent facilitation of the sessions. And of course, I would like to thank our presenters, Ms. Vivian earlier and Ms. Leah and Mr. Sushil for your great presentation. I really much enjoyed your presentation, especially it was very interesting to listen that Nepal conducted their very first time the climate change impact survey. And hopefully our members also had many takeaways from our presenters' presentations and today's session. So we are close to the end of the meeting. So let me just briefly wrap up today's meeting. It was a very successful meeting for us. We endorsed our 5-year strategic plan, and then hopefully our members and we will implement this plan together very successfully. So, and then also we had 3 presentations and 1 piloting survey presentation from the Philippines, and then also country experience presentations from Georgia and Nepal. So before closing the meeting, I would like to ask the Secretariat to speak if you have any housekeeping announcements or any other businesses. Thank you.
Yes, Arjuna, if ever some members still have questions in the chat, you can just, if you have questions to any of the presenters, you can just type in the chat and presenters will answer them respectively also in the chat.
Yeah, thank you, Maria.
Okay, that's all, Arjuna.
Yeah. Also, we highly encourage you to participate to the first forum, which will be held on 7th, 8th, and 10th of June. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's right.
So, any other comments or suggestions before closing the meeting? If not, before I declare this meeting closed, I would like to let you know that our next meeting is scheduled on Wednesday, 13th of June. And again, I would like to thank you all for your time for joining us today. And with this, I would like to close the technical working groups meeting. And thank you very much, and then see you next week. Please take care.